feel like your family is cursed? I live with my grandma, my mom, and my older sister. I'm surrounded by women, but not one man. It must be a curse because my grandparents had a terrible marriage, and my parents' marriage was a total fail too. So this made my mom and grandma super sensitive around men. They thought all men were dangerous and always warned me and my sister not to go near boys. I'm Gemma, by the way, and my sister's name is Lacey. She's the sweet one who always listens to what mom and grandma say, and I guess you could say I'm a rebel child. Most of my friends were boys, but of course, my family didn't know that. Whenever I spoke about my friends, I pretended they were all girls. Otherwise, my mom would probably kill me. Even though I was surrounded by male friends, when it came to love, it was a whole other story. I was actually quite shy about it all. Maybe my mom and grandma really had rubbed off on me, because whenever a boy told me he liked me, I didn't believe him. One time, in middle school though, I almost believed this boy. He said he had a huge crush on me and would even die for me. He would literally sit outside our front door from morning to night, waiting until I agreed to be his girlfriend. But he couldn't escape the wrath of my mom. When she caught him, she threw a bucket of water at him, and he immediately ran away. Clearly, he wouldn't die for me then. There were other boys who also said they couldn't live without me, but I still see them wandering around alive and well, so I guess my mom and grandma were right. Men are a bunch of liars. But there were always exceptions, and my exception was Brett. Oh, dreamy Brett. I met him in a record store, and we both went to grab the same record at exactly the same time. I was smitten from first glance. All those warnings about boys left my head, and I could barely see. My eyes had turned to heart emojis. The rest was history. We fell in love and became a couple, and eventually I plucked up the courage to bring him home. I bet no one could deny a cute guy like him, my grandma and mom included. Little did I know that I was just inviting him into the lion's den. As soon as he stepped into our house, he gave my grandma a hug and said, "You must be Gemma's mom. I can see where she gets her good looks." Then he turned to my mom and said, "Hi, Lacey. You're even prettier than in the photos." But then, of course, Lacey appeared, and the realization dawned on Brett's face, and he laughed and said he hadn't expected me to have such a young and beautiful grandma and mom. My mom and grandma were trying hard to hide their amusement, and Brett just winked at me. Oh boy, he was cunning. In the middle of dinner, when Brett went to the bathroom, I noticed my mom and grandma grinning at each other. They were up to something. What if they'd put something in his food? I didn't trust them one bit and asked them what was going on. But they just smiled sweetly and said, "Nothing, sweetie pie." I took a bite of his mashed potato, and it was so salty. I asked them why they'd done it, and my grandma said, "We just want to see if he's a liar like all other men. Honey, let's see if he'll choose to be a polite or an honest man." When Brett came back, my grandma asked him if he liked her cooking, and he said, "It's delicious, thanks. I like that you don't hold back on the salt. Really brings out the natural flavors of the potato." Ha! That's my boy! Well done, Brett! My grandma and mom didn't end their pranks there, though. They were determined to make a fool of Brett. My mom asked him to help her get dessert from the fridge, and she put a fake plastic spider on top of the cake. She obviously wanted to frighten him, but he didn't fall for it. He just scooped it off and left it on the table. And then after dinner, my grandma asked if he wanted to join her for a post-dinner smoke, and he politely declined. It was clear they weren't going to find his weaknesses that easily. When we finished dinner, Lacey went up to her room. Shortly after, my grandma and mom suddenly said they heard someone was calling outside, so they stood up and came out to check. I could see their frustrated faces as they couldn't find any reason to forbid my love story with Brett, so they must be going out to discuss. I told Brett to wait in the kitchen while I went to eavesdrop on them, but as soon as I walked into the hallway, all the lights went off, and I heard someone kicking the door down. I was so panicked that I just uncontrollably screamed loudly, and could not stop shaking, holding my head and screaming for help in panic. God, I could even hear a sound like a gun being loaded. We were about to be robbed? I just stood there, frozen in place. I was terrified. But then, I felt a hand on my shoulder and almost jumped out of my skin. But luckily, it was just Brett. He pulled me close to him while holding something like a candlestick holder. Then he was about to leave me there to face whomever caused this. But I was so scared that I just held him tight and started sobbing. Suddenly, the lights came back on. After being dazzled for a moment, I noticed my mom and grandma standing right there in front of me. My grandma shouted, "Who are you?" I didn't know what she was talking about, so I looked up at Brett and jumped. It wasn't Brett. It was some random guy. I ran towards my mom and said, "He's a robber. He has a gun." My grandma just laughed and said, "There are no robbers, silly. This was just a test for your boyfriend. We wanted to see how brave he was." Then my grandma jerked her head towards the kitchen, and there Brett was, cowering under the table. Really? How did my mom and grandma expect him to react in such a dangerous situation? Anyway, it's such an embarrassment when seeing him like that. But wait, who was this random guy? Suddenly he spoke and said, Actually, I'm Chris, Lacey's boyfriend." My mom and grandma looked so shocked. My mom screamed upstairs, "Lacey, get down here at once." Well, this was awkward. Turns out Chris and Lacey had been secretly dating for over a year. He even had a rope ladder that he used to climb into her room every weekend. I couldn't believe it. I glanced over at Lacey. This whole time, I thought this young lady was innocent and up there reading in her bedroom, when actually, she just pretended to be a true believer of whatever Mom and Grandma said and was sneaking around with a boyfriend behind all of our backs. Greater wisdom than me. Although, there was no denying that Chris was a good guy. As soon as the lights had gone out, he'd hidden Lacey in a corner and came down to investigate and take care of me, without worrying about the danger of it all. Poor Brett. He hadn't passed this test, but I couldn't blame him. As for my mom and grandma, they were so shocked, they couldn't even speak. Lacey asked them to accept Chris and give them official permission to date. But my mom and grandma just ignored her and went to their rooms. After that, Chris was over a lot, but my mom and grandma treated him in the same way they'd done with Brett, always testing him. One night, they even did a quiz to see how intelligent he was, and they even sent fake messages to Lacey's phone, pretending to be another guy to see how jealous he'd get. But he didn't fall for it. Him and Lacey were a solid couple. Poor Chris and Brett. They couldn't catch a break. My mom and grandma constantly said Brett was a coward and Chris was sneaky, and they were so rude to them. I realized no man could ever please them. Their pasts still haunted them, and their prejudices were so extreme. But no matter how much they hated our boyfriends, Lacey and I weren't going to give up. My grandma's birthday arrived, and Lacey and I said we had a big present for her. Grandma's response was, "Girls, the only present I want right now is for you both to dump those boyfriends of yours. That's the only thing that will make me happy." Lacey smiled and said, "Sure, Grandma, anything for you." Then she pulled out a pregnancy test and said, "But Grandma, I'm having a baby with Chris. If it'll make you happy, though, I'll break up with him and raise the baby by myself, just like how you raised Mom, and how Mom raised Gemma and me." My mom and grandma looked like they were going to pass out, and before they could say anything more, I continued, "Brett and I will break up too, although I want you to know how much I love him. If you'd prefer me to be lonely for the rest of my life, I'll do it, because like you always say, men are poison. In fact, I've decided to become a nun. I'm quitting school, and I'll leave for the monastery next week." At this, my mom burst into tears and grabbed my hand and said, "Baby, no, don't choose such a lonely path. Stay with us." My grandma was also crying and hugging Lacey, saying, "Sweetie, don't be stupid. Your baby can't grow up without a dad. Chris is an amazing guy. Don't listen to me. He's great. I'm so sorry. So, there you have it. Lacey and I are still with Chris and Brett, and we couldn't be happier. Mom and Grandma have accepted them, and dare I say it, they're even nice to them now. There's just one small problem, though. How is Lacey going to explain the fact that her belly isn't growing? Wink, wink. Looks like my mom and Grandma aren't the only ones good at testing people. It must run in our family. Wish us luck.
Hey, I'm Callie. I'm almost 16, but I could live in peace only in the first 2 years of my child's life, until my little brother, Ethan, came along and ruined everything. I always hoped that that little brat had never been born. And if you're the oldest sibling like I am, then chances are you'll feel the same way as I do. Firstly, his birth meant that my parents barely noticed me anymore. Yeah, I know I was 2 back then, so I don't actually remember this, but as the years passed by, I saw how it was. I got into trouble for dumb things because I was the oldest, while Ethan got away with everything because he was too young to understand. Ugh, I really hate my brother. And I could tell tons of reasons for that. We always fought over the last slice of pizza. When he got it, he'd eat it open-mouthed in front of me. And Mom would smile and say, "Ah, my growing boy." But when I got it, Mom would frown at me and say, "Callie, don't be greedy." Ugh! He'd sneak into my room and took the plushy bunny my bestie gave me and superglued its ears together. So I took his Switch and hid it in the basement. It took him an entire week to find it. Ha! In revenge, he smeared chocolate over the back of my pants. I only realized what was going on when other kids started laughing and pointing at me. I had to wear my sweater tied around my waist for the rest of the day, even though it was freezing. So, I retaliated by rubbing stinging nettles on his pillow. The next morning, his face was bright red, and he couldn't stop itching. It was so funny. It was also a photo shoot day. So much to his protests, a makeup artist spent ages applying makeup on him to cover up the redness. He looked so ridiculous. You see, my dad's a politician, so sometimes we have to appear in photo shoots where we look like a loving, harmonious family. Pfft, as if. I could play pretend for the cameras, but in reality, I really just wanted to kick my brother's butt. We just didn't get on at all. He's such a brat. So I guess pranking each other was our coping strategy. I mean, hey, it isn't easy living with someone you hate. Our pranks happen so often that our parents just let us get on with it. However, there is one thing Ethan is terrified of. It all started back when he was 8, and Dad was watching The Walking Dead. Me and Ethan walked into the room just as there was a zoom-in scene in which a zombie was having a feeding frenzy. Being the brave girl, I thought it was interesting and sat down and watched it with Dad. But my bro, being the wuss, he screamed, then ran out of the room, hid under our parents' bed, burst into tears, and refused to move for 2 hours because he was convinced that at the sight of that zombie, he knew he must be chosen, and zombies were going out to get him. Got a Achilles heel. So, not long after that, when he dropped my brand new headphones down the toilet, which made me have to put my hand in to pick it up, I decided to get revenge on him. And luckily for me, Halloween was just around the corner. Perfect. I binge-watched makeup tutorials on YouTube and practiced on my friends. Then on Halloween, I turned myself into a seriously scary zombie, hid the video camera in his room, got into his closet, and made grumbling and moaning sounds. When he opened the closet door, I jumped out at him and tackled him to the floor. OMG, he screamed so loudly and he actually peed his pants. And now, all these years later, I still have it on video to torment him with. Ha! But don't be fooled, as my brother was not your average kiddie. It wasn't that long ago that he played a prank on me, which made me madder than Misty from Pokemon. So, I had a crush on this boy from school. He was just so sweet and dreamy, and from the cute glances he kept on giving me, I was 100% sure he liked me too. Valentine's Day seemed like the perfect day to express my feelings toward him. So I stayed up until midnight the night before making chocolate for him. I left my chocolates lovingly wrapped and boxed on the side in the kitchen and went to bed. The next day, I grabbed the box and at lunchtime, I handed it to my crush. To my utter dismay when he opened it, instead of the lovely heart-shaped chocolates I'd spent hours making, there were embarrassing childhood pics of me, including a photo from when I was 12 with a bunch of hideous pimples on my face. One of me as a toddler sleeping with my mouth open and saliva drool on my chin, and one of me as a baby with a bowl of food mush on my head. Then my crush lifted up a note saying, "Great chocolates, sis." That sneaky brat. Although my crush kept saying that I looked really cute in those photos and he liked them even more than chocolates, I still wanted to give that brat a hard punch right in his annoying face. Oh God, I'm begging you, please take him away from me. I'll be good. I'll do my homework on time, and I'll stop borrowing Mom's expensive perfume. Okay, so this may have been my wish, but I never expected that it would come true. It was a normal evening around the dinner table. Ethan was glued to his phone, and Mom got really annoyed and made him clear up the table. While he was doing that, I saw a message pop up on his phone from someone called Sophie, saying, "Okay, I'll see you in the front of the cinema at 8 p.m. I'm looking forward to it," smiley face. What? Ethan had a date? Oh, my sweet little bro. It was payback time for ruining my crush's chocolates. So I stealthily followed Ethan to the cinema. Because the cinema was pretty close to our home, we both walked. He cut through the park. Geez, it was creepy at this time. I swear the trees looked like monsters. Anyway, I saw something light up by my feet. I picked it up. It was Ethan's phone. What an idiot. I was so gonna make him work hard to get this back. As I walked out of the park, I saw a black van parked nearby. Suddenly, I heard a scream and saw two giant men trying to drag Ethan toward the back of the van. Ethan was crying and struggling with fierce resistance, but my weak, skinny 14-year-old brother was no rival for those two men. What? How dare they try and kidnap my brother? He might have been the most annoying human on the planet, but he was my annoying little brother. There's no way I was letting this happen. I rushed forward and shouted, "Ethan, zombie mode on!" My presence startled the two kidnappers, and this made them more intent on dragging him toward the van. When all of a sudden, Ethan bit down hard into the hand of the man who was covering his mouth, just like how zombies always do. Good one, bro. The man wept out and shook his hand. The other man pulled on Ethan's arm, but he managed to scramble to his feet. As the man tried to push him into the van, Ethan sought his opportunity and kicked him right between his legs. Ouch. While this was going on, I called the cops and told them to be quick. Then I saw the jerk with the bitten hand about to grab Ethan again. So I screamed out loud, "Ethan, run!" He sprinted off into the park and the bitten man followed him. It was exactly a real-life zombie chase. Huh. Suddenly, I felt arms grab me around the waist. Oh no, it was the other guy. He said, "I guess you'll have to go too," before he lifted me up and carried me over to the back of the van. I screamed out and tried hitting and kicking out, but he was too strong. He threw me into the back of the van before he could get in. I smashed the van door and quickly locked the door from the inside to knock him out. Lucky for me, not him, but the guy chasing Ethan was the one who was keeping the key. It was so scary when the kidnapper kept shouting at me outside, but I was even more frightened thinking Ethan could get hurt somewhere out there. Then suddenly I heard his voice. "Hey, stop!" Did he get caught? I looked out to see the contrary. He was running towards me after two police officials. They were holding their guns to control the guy standing by the van. Ethan was safe and came back for me. I opened the door and jumped into his arms. Oh, let's skip this part. I get goosebumps every time I recall this weepy situation. Me and Ethan followed the cops and saw the other kidnapper handcuffed to a tree, fighting with mosquitoes with his one free arm in the dark. The police told me that during the way heading to the van, Ethan kept on complaining about how slow and unprofessional they were, as they should come to save me first instead. My boy still stubbornly said, "I could run myself, but this wimp couldn't." The idiot definitely couldn't have imagined that he has a Wonder Woman big sister like me. Our parents rushed into the police department to see us. And yep, weepy part again. Turned out my dad's rival had hired the guy to kidnap Ethan so that they could use him to blackmail my dad. I don't clearly understand the whole situation. Maybe after this I'll watch more political movies, but now, thanks God, we're safe. I may have wished my brother would disappear, but when I actually could have lost him forever, Well, I have to admit that it really freaked me out, and it turns out he felt the same way about me too. Crazy, huh? Of course, we still play pranks on each other. We wouldn't be us if we didn't. But I realized something. He might be the most annoying brat ever, but he's still my family. And I love my family so much. However, I'm pretty sure there'll still be times when I hate my annoying little bro. Like right now, while I'm sitting in my room telling you my story, I'm sure I can hear him giggling outside of my door. What's the betting I open it and end up with a bucket of cold water on my head or something? All this may because I have told my mom he has a girlfriend. Tough luck, little bro. There's no way you're getting the better of this pranking queen.
Hey guys, I want to tell you about my most memorable summer. It involves a parent-free house, the girl of my dreams, and my little bro Silas's massive secret. Actually, Silas doesn't want me telling you about it, but this story is too fun to keep it for ourselves. So stay tuned, let me tell you what happened. Imagine the scene. I'm there eating corn dogs when my parents announce they're going away on vacation for their 20th wedding anniversary. That means I'll be home alone all week long in our big farmhouse surrounded by vast fields. Sounds great, right? But wait, it got even better when my childhood friends who had now lived in another city were also back in town for the summer vacation. Of course, my parents let me invite them over to stay while they're away. That's how close our families were. Oh God, I haven't seen Carl in over a year. And his sister Ellie too. Yep, I wouldn't say that I had the biggest crush on my best friend's sister, but there's that. Anyway, this was gonna be my summer paradise. But you know, man proposes, God disposes. It turns out my parents weren't taking Silas with them because they thought I was old enough to look after my little brother. Ugh, what a bummer. How was I meant to impress Ellie when I had a whining kid to care for? I needed to think fast. So as soon as we waved our parents off, I passed my PS4 to him and said, Silas, you can play on it, but only if you promise to do as I ask and stay out of my way. Of course, he agreed. I mean, what 8-year-old boy wouldn't want to play Fortnite? I checked on him now and then and gave him juice and snacks. Other than that, I had plenty of time to spend hanging out with Carl and Ellie. Things were going well for the first few days, and nothing beats being around your best bud and your crush all day long. Whoa, I just couldn't take my eyes off Ellie. She seemed to have gotten even more beautiful. Then, on one evening, we were sitting outside, stargazing. It was so romantic, especially when Carl thought it was dull and left us to go to bed first. I was about to do the whole yawn and stretch out my arm to wrap around her shoulders trick when Silas appeared and squeezed in between us. I glared at him and through gritted teeth asked him what he wanted. He just shrugged and said, Edward, I'm bored of that game now. I want ice cream. Ellie laughed, then led him off to get some. What? How dare that little dweeb ruin my smooth moves? What a buzzkill! I needed to come up with a new trick to handle this annoying kid. So, the next morning, I told Silas that if he wanted to download a new game of his choice, he needed to go into the field and find a corn cob with exactly 200 seeds on it. He looked like he was going to cry, but he went off to the field. Oh, how smart I am, sending my little brother on a wild goose chase. I expected him to give up after a few hours, but nope. He was out there searching for it all day. He even managed to drag Carl along to help him. In the end, he still had to leave empty-handed. Anyway, I have to thank my stupid brother for helping me to have such a good afternoon with Ellie. That night, we all sat together in the living room and told creepy ghost stories. I hoped Ellie would freak out so much she nestled into my lap for protection. So I told him about the empty house up the road, which was also our family's property. My grandparents used to live there, but now it had been abandoned for over 40 years. There were plenty of rumors about it being haunted. One farmer said he saw a ghostly woman by the window, but she vanished into thin air. And someone else said they saw a spooky figure float out of the house and chase after them. Ellie chuckled, then said, Ooh, spooky. We should go and check it out. What? This wasn't what I had in mind. In fact, she didn't seem afraid at all. I didn't want to go in there. It was old and creepy, and just thinking about it freaked me out. Luckily for me, Silas strongly discouraged us by saying that he had heard someone crying in that house, and our parents didn't allow us to go there. And then, from nowhere, I felt the chilly wind blow over me with a whistle, which made my hair stand on end. And boom! The lights went out, leaving the whole room in darkness. Everyone was confused. What on earth was going on? I didn't want to die now. Not when I haven't even told my crush my feelings yet. I was lost in terrifying thoughts when the lights came back on, and everyone else immediately bursted out laughing. OMG, I found myself sitting on Ellie's lap with my head between my hands. It turns out that my evil little brother was the one who turned the lights off as a prank. How humiliating. Oh well, at least Ellie changed her mind about wanting to check the house out. But then, over the next few days, weird things started happening. I went to grab a snack for my secret loot under my bed, but what's this? All of the Snickers bars had gone. It couldn't have been Silas, as he hated Snickers bars, right? Then we were watching a movie. Ellie started shivering, so being the awesome guy I am, I went to get a blanket for her, but all of the blankets had gone? When I went back and told Carl and Ellie about it, Ellie said that was odd, as the other day she couldn't find her pajamas, and Carl's pack of Gatorade had vanished too. So, is there a real ghost in my house? As for my bro, he was acting like he was haunted. He barely talked anymore, and for 3 days in a row, at 6 p.m. on the dot, he disappeared out of the house for hours. This was so strange. I mean, that's the time slot for his favorite show, and he seriously wouldn't miss Adventure Time without a good reason. For me, it's great that Silas isn't at home, but since I'm the older brother, I still have to keep an eye on him, as Mom and Dad wouldn't have been best impressed if I'd lost him or something. That night, he mysteriously disappeared again. I was quite curious, so I went to look for Silas but couldn't find him anywhere. Panicked, I raced around the garden calling out his name. Finally, I felt a hand pounding on my shoulder. My heart was in my mouth. I turned around to see Silas standing there sweating. I shouted at him, "You can't just run off without saying a word! Where have you been?" But Silas calmly replied, "So what? It's my business, not yours." Then he ran straight inside. He gotta be kidding me. Okay, then if secrecy was the game he wanted to play, then I wouldn't mind being the detective either. I had to figure this out. So I gathered Ellie and Carl and came up with a genius plan. The next day at lunch, as planned, Silas entered the kitchen and everything was set. I placed an eye-catching candy-filled jar on the table, and as expected, Silas immediately picked up a handful and put them right in his mouth. Oh, just look at his happy face. He had no idea what I had in store for him. Right after that, we entered the room. Not wanting to get caught eating food on the sly, Silas quickly hid under the table. And of course, we pretended not to know he was there. Then I held up that candy jar and said, "Guys, guess what? I've ordered these pills online. It's the legendary invisible candy that makes it impossible for people to see me." Carl acted surprised. "Unbelievable! How did you get this? I heard it's such a hit that it was sold out everywhere." Then Ellie asked me how long we could disappear if we ate these candies. I replied, "I think if we just eat 4 to 5 candies, we can disappear for 45 minutes. We continued our skit, then I said I had to leave the candy jar here. So tomorrow we can try it and go out pranking everyone with our new superpower. I winked and everyone nodded. Now, where did Silas go again? I asked, and everyone shook their heads. Then I picked up an apple and purposely dropped it on the floor, then immediately peered underneath the table to look for it while pretending not to see Silas down there. He looked absolutely amazed, trying not to make any sound. Now Silas thought he was truly invisible. He crawled out, then did all sorts of funny things in front of us, from dancing, shaking his butt, and cartwheeling across the room. It was so hard to keep a straight face and ignore his existence. Then, at 6 p.m., Silas left the house with a backpack on. But because he thought he was invisible, he ran straight past us without hesitation, and didn't forget to stick his tongue out at me before leaving. This idiot. We followed him, and guess what? He went to the abandoned house. We hid behind a tree to watch, and suddenly the door creaked open. I was a little creeped out, so I clung to Ellie's arm. Someone ran over to him. A little girl. Oh no, was it a ghost? Ellie said, "OMG, she's in my clothes!" I looked closer and realized she wasn't a ghost, but in fact, was a real-life girl. So Silas hid that little girl in our abandoned house, and that's why he kept telling us over and over again not to come here. Since Silas thought that he was invisible, he kept running around her saying, "You can't see me, right?" He looked so funny as the little girl was too bewildered to understand anything. And right then we barged in shouting, "Gotcha!" Well, well, well. Look who's the big guy hiding his girlfriend here. I pulled out Silas's backpack, which was filled with Snickers bars and other missing items. Silas was shocked and sputtered, It's not what you think. The little girl burst into tears and said, I'm Sally. I got lost, so Silas helped me. Silas said that he had met Sally one day on the cornfield. She was alone and hungry, so he brought her here and took care of her. He didn't dare tell us because he was afraid that we would make fun of him. Oh, I didn't think that my usual foolish brother was able to do such a good thing. So I hugged them and said, I don't blame anyone, Silas. You did a very good job, and Sally, you will be safe here. Take her to our house and I will call someone for help. Fortunately, the police said that they were also looking for a missing child, and the next day, Sally was reunited with her parents. It turned out she was at a crowded train station when she ended up lost. Confused, she followed a man with the same shirt as her father, and that's how she ended up lost in our fields. Yeah, my brother is a bit annoying at times, but he's a good kid with a kind heart. Since then, we've grown closer, and I used my savings to reward my brother with a console of his very own. As for me and Ellie, well, let's just say our relationship is still in the friend zone for now, but Carl might have noticed something, and he didn't seem to oppose it, so just give me time and wish me luck. I've never liked hospitals. Yeah, I get it, no one really does. Yet here I was sitting in the hospital waiting area, silently praying that she would be all right. Geez, I was shaking like an old dog left out in the cold. I just couldn't think straight. Why was no one telling me if she would be okay? Suddenly, a stern-faced doctor appeared and told me, Sir, the operation was a success. Your sister will be just fine. You can go through and see her now. I didn't know whether to burst into tears because of relief or to run away because of fear. Finally, I still went to see her. She blinked open her eyes, then fixed them on me, and in a groggy voice said, Who are you? I get it. My appearance unnerves people. I've never been a looker, and this scar sure doesn't help. But people will always judge. Maybe if they stop to talk to me, then I can tell them that I'm a military veteran who got it due to an accident during training. Training I was doing so I could fight to save their butts. Anyway, that's a story for another day. Now, talking about the girl in the hospital, let me continue my story. Well, it began with my evening shift as a delivery driver. I was humming along to the radio when this girl came out of nowhere and ran straight into the middle of the road. I slammed on my brakes, but it was too late. I heard a thud. She was lying there all limp. It was horrible. For a moment I thought she was dead and I was too scared to check on her. Suddenly a thought of abandoning her popped up in my mind. But no, I couldn't be that heartless, so I ran to check her pulse. Phew, she was still alive. I called for an ambulance and told her help was on the way. In the hospital, the doctor said she needed emergency surgery, but they had to have a relative's consent first. The girl had no ID on her or anything. What was I meant to do? I couldn't just sit there and let her die. So I blurted out, I give my permission. I'm her brother. When the girl asked me who I was, well, I had no idea how to reply. The doctor concluded that she must have memory loss. So, who are you? The girl asked me again. I couldn't go changing my story now, so I replied, I'm Chelvin, your brother. Oh, hi, Chelvin. I'm sorry. I don't remember you. This girl seemed so sweet. I instantly warmed to her. It's been just me and my dog Buster for I don't know how many years. Girls usually take one look at me and run away as fast as their heeled shoes can take them. But this girl wasn't looking at me like they did. The doctors asked me what her name was, so I said Alice. That was my mother's name. Before I even knew what I was doing, I'd used my savings to pay for her hospital fees. Then I visited her every day. I thought she'd ask me about her family, friends, I don't know, everything. But nope. She just liked listening to me ramble on, mainly about Buster. When she was ready to leave the hospital, I took her back to my house. I made up the spare room and bought some new bed covers, laid some clothes out on the bed, and put some flowers in there to make it look nice. Alice seemed to like it. She smiled, told me I was sweet, then hugged me. I bet I was blushing like a beetroot. I left her there to get ready. Then I made a start on dinner. She came downstairs in this dress I'd bought at the mall for her, and oh my days, she looked like a picture. I made an excuse to go and get her a drink, so she wouldn't see how flustered I was. I thought she'd ask me stuff about her life, but she didn't. Not one question. So I decided to tell her anyway. I mean, I'd spent days making the backstory up, so I may as well share it with her. It's just you and me now, and it has been that way for a long time. Our parents passed away some years ago now. Our mom, she was called Alice too. "Oh, it's a nice name," she muttered back. "Do I look like her?" Yes, you have her hair." I told her a few other things, such as how she'd just broken up with her boyfriend and was in between homes at the moment. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like she was soaking my words in and taking some comfort from them. The next day, things changed, and Alice started doing erratic things. I went downstairs bright and early to find that she'd emptied all of my kitchen cupboards and was scrubbing them clean. When I asked her what she was doing, she ignored me and carried on. It's like she was in her own bubble and couldn't hear me at all. I told myself this was probably just her way of adjusting to everything. But then her odd behavior continued. When a delivery guy knocked on the door, she leaped behind the couch. Afterward, I asked her what was up. But she said she was just looking for her lost earring. Another time, I was waiting for my favorite TV show to start, and we were both chatting on the couch, but she suddenly grabbed the TV remote, turned it off, then walked out of the room with the remote. This was normal, right? She'd been through a lot. Maybe this was a stage of her recovery? Most of the time, she was such a sweet and lovely girl. She always packed food and snacks for me to take to work, and she made such a fuss of Buster. Okay, so she still did her cupboard cleaning ritual every single morning, but hey, we all have our quirks. Having another mouth to feed meant I had to work more hours, but I didn't mind it. For once, I felt like a purpose. She helped me find the reason to live again, instead of just existing. I often took her treats home, such as cookies or Hawaiian pizza, her favorites. If I was working night shifts, she always waited up for me. It made me feel so warm inside when I arrived home and saw her sitting there with Buster. I had no money left at the end of each month, but I had something more. I had happiness. I liked this girl. I more than liked her, but I couldn't tell her this, as she thought I was her brother. I knew I needed to tell her the truth, but I just didn't know how to go about doing so. One morning, after she'd finished her cupboard cleaning and we were enjoying breakfast, I told her about the job I had on, delivering a parcel to Sherry Hill Street. Her eyes widened. Then she told me she wanted to come too. This was surprising, as she's shown no interest in leaving the house before. I mean, she refused to even take Buster for a walk, but I agreed without questioning her. I told her to wait in the lorry while I delivered the parcel. Only when I got back, she wasn't there. I ran around the block searching for her. But then I saw a crowd and it seemed like there's a car accident. My face paled. I ran as fast as I could to see who the victim was, and luckily it wasn't her. Phew. I kept looking around and finally I found her. She was sitting on the curb with her head in her hands. She was crying. I sat down next to her and hugged her. She might be too scared witnessing the terrible accident. Then, when she was ready, I took her home. The next morning, I went downstairs expecting to see her cleaning the cupboards, but she wasn't there. I made her some toast and a coffee and took them up to her room. She opened the door, glared at me, then said, "I remember everything. I know you're not my brother. Alice, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to help you." She shouted at me, "My name's not even Alice!" Then she stormed past me. I rushed after her and heard the door bang shut. She'd gone. So that's it. I was back to my lonely, sad life. Each day after work, I came home to see no one waiting for me. No hot meals, no laugh, nothing but a boring, empty house. 3 months went by, and one day I was delivering some boxes to this rich shop owner guy. The boxes were very heavy, and one of them fell out of my arms and hit the floor. The shop guy started yelling at me, "You idiot! I'm not paying you to be neglectful." But then what do I expect? You can't even look after your own face. I didn't say anything. Instead, I peered down at my feet. Then I heard footsteps, so I looked up and there she was. It was Alice. Oh no, I didn't want her to see me being scorned at like this. Suddenly, she shouted at the man, "Hey, just because you have money doesn't mean you can say anything to others. Apologize to him or I will not let up on you." The man sneered and told her to go away. I couldn't deal with this, so I walked away. But Alice rushed after me and called out to me, "Please, Chelvin, let me tell you the truth." I stopped walking, and that's when she told me everything. It turns out she'd never lost her memory. She faked it because she wanted to escape her miserable life. Her husband was a cruel man who cheated on her, beat her, and controlled her. He was a famous TV presenter, which is why she turned off the TV that time, as she'd seen him on there. She hid when the doorbell rang, as she was terrified it'd be him, and she tidied the cupboard every morning out of habit, as if she didn't do it back home, he would beat her. What? This was crazy. I needed answers. So I asked her, "So you faked regaining your memories? And that outburst, it was all a lie?" "Chelvin, I'm so sorry. I knew I couldn't drag you into my personal life anymore. I used to live in Sherry Hill Street. That's why I came with you. I found out my husband thought I was dead, so he married another woman. I made him sign the divorce papers and set me free. I also made him give me a payout, else I'd ruin his precious career." Then she handed me some money and told me it was to cover the expenses for when she was living with me, and that she'd also send me some money to cover her hospital fees. We hugged, and I cried like a baby. Gee, this was all too much for me. But then, to my surprise, she grinned, went to shake my hand, then said, "Hey, I'm Julia. It's a pleasure to meet you." So, after that, thanks to her ex, Julia was able to buy a nice little house. Actually, I'm helping her renovate it. We've become pretty great friends. To be honest, just looking at her makes my stomach flip. I love her so much. I know I need to tell her. Life's far too short not to. If she says no, well, then at least I'll still have her friendship, right? I might not have model looks, but I'm a good person. Julia's taught me to realize that. I hope she says yes, but what will be, will be. Wish me luck.
I opened the drawer and, there it was. I'd been looking for this magazine for ages. But as I closed the drawer, I noticed something else. A photo hiding under the magazine. There was a woman and 2 kids in the photo. A boy and a girl. I was so confused. Who were they? I turned it over and there was a message on the back that said, "This is my new number. Call me more often. I miss you so much." Suddenly my mom came in and I was about to ask her about the photo, but she got mad and started screaming at me to get out of the room. "Never, ever come into our room again. Do you hear me, Erin? We have private stuff in here. You know the rules." I was just looking for the magazine, I said, and quickly tucked the photo inside before running out of her room. Actually, I knew I wasn't meant to go in my parents' room, but I was doing a school essay on sustainability, and I'd seen an article in my mom's magazine about it a few days back. So I'd searched the whole house to try and find it. Eventually, I knew the only place it could be was their room, so I snuck in. Usually their door was locked, so I was in luck. Ever since I was a kid, I had been forbidden to go in there, but I had no idea why. Back in my room, I couldn't stop staring at the photo. Were these my relatives or something? Long-lost cousins? The boy in the pic looked totally like my dad. Oh no. Reading the note behind it again, suddenly I thought this could be another family of my dad. Do you know what I meant? Yes. What if my dad had a secret family? Maybe he'd cheated on my mom and had this whole other secret life. My inner detective was going crazy. There was nothing else for it. I had to get to the bottom of this and find out the truth. I searched online for the phone number and couldn't believe it when a girl the same age as me popped up. I started scrolling through all her photos and suddenly saw one of a young guy holding a baby, and the caption said, "Miss the old days of being daddy's little girl." This was insane. I was certain the young guy in the photo was my dad, and I needed to talk to the girl ASAP. I messaged her and told her we were related. I even sent some photos of me taken with my dad to prove it. I was shaking when I saw her reply pop up. My dad never mentioned you, not even once. That hurt me so much. I couldn't believe this girl was actually my dad's daughter, too. Now, how am I supposed to break this news to Mom? She'd freak out. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing this crush her. So, I decided to go clear things up myself first. A few days later, my dad was going on a business trip to Boston. Again. He was always going to Boston. I'd always believed he was just super busy at work, but now I knew the truth as my dad's secret daughter had confirmed she was also from Boston. I mean, of course she was. So I told my mom I was going to spend the weekend at my friend's house. And the moment my dad left, I jumped in a cab that I'd called and asked the driver to follow him. When we got to Boston, I saw my dad stop outside of a house and then glance around as if he thought he was about to get caught. Then he got out of his car and rang the doorbell. A woman came to open, and immediately they started kissing. Then a young girl appeared, and, yep, it was exactly the people in the photo. I was shaking so much, I actually dropped the money for the cab. It felt like my dad had punched me in the chest. I was so upset. He had this whole other family that Mom and I had no clue about. I couldn't stand it anymore. Mom didn't deserve this. I walked towards the house and was so focused on what I was planning to say to my dad, I didn't even notice a van pulling up right next to me. Suddenly, everything went black, and I realized I had been blindfolded. A huge hand was covering my mouth so I couldn't even scream. I felt tape being put across my lips, sealing them shut. Then someone yanked me backwards and shoved me into some kind of car. Oh my God, was I being kidnapped? Why? Had my dad seen me and now he was trying to cover his tracks? This was like something out of a movie. They even tied me up. After what felt like 1 billion hours, we finally stopped and I was dragged out of the car into a cold, dark building. Someone took my blindfold off, but it was so dark inside I couldn't really see anything except a single light bulb above my head. The tape across my mouth was pulled off and I was untied. I wanted to run out of there as fast as possible, but I was terrified. 2 men dressed in black were standing in the room, and one of them glared at me and said, "They think they can hide you forever?" "Who are you?" I shouted. "Where am I? If it's money you want, call my dad. Please, just let me go," I said, in what must have been the shakiest voice ever. "Don't worry, we're not going to hurt you. We don't even need money. It's your parents we want. In 3 weeks, they'll be out of prison, and then they'll need to come here to get you back. Then we can really punish you for knowing too many secrets about us." I had no idea what they were talking about. Prison? My parents aren't in prison. You've got the wrong person. One of the men just laughed and said, "It's been 12 years, and yet you still don't know about it." Then he walked off laughing his head off. What? What were they talking about? None of this made any sense. My dad was a businessman, and my mom was a housewife. This was all some big mix-up. It had to be. They'd locked me in that dark room. I tried to scream and bang on the door, but no one heard me. Or if they did, they didn't care. The next few days were some of the worst of my life. I didn't think I'd survive. Twice a day, someone slipped food under the door, and I spent most of the time trying to think of ways to escape. There was no window, but there was a small air vent, and if I could just open it, I thought I might be able to crawl through and get the heck out of this disgusting, shabby place. Lucky for me, they'd given me a fork to eat with, and slowly I'd been using it to loosen the screws on the grid of the vent. Finally, on the 3rd night, I waited until everything was dead quiet, and I got into the vent. I crawled through and managed to get out. I was at the back of some old abandoned warehouse, and as I stood up to stretch my legs, someone covered my mouth from behind. Oh no! How had I got caught so quickly? But then I heard a voice. "Shh, are you okay?" I almost screamed. It was my mom. "How did you find me?" I asked. But she just grabbed my hand and said, "Let's get out of here, then I'll explain." We climbed through a small gap in the fence, and then I saw a black car by the road. I started to panic again, but my mom told me it was for us. And then as we climbed in, she said to the driver, "I got her, James. Let's go." It was only then that I finally took a look at my mom and realized what she was wearing. She was in all black and looked like a spy or something. Mom, what's going on? My mom bit her lip and said she couldn't hide it from me anymore. What she told me next was unbelievable. Turns out my parents weren't even my real parents. My biological mom and dad used to be members of this mob, but 12 years ago they'd been given an impossible task and they refused to do it, so their boss said he'd harm me as their punishment. My parents had no choice but to turn themselves in and ask the police for protection for me. In return, they gave the police some confidential info about the mob. Whoa, I was shocked. So, you're not my mom? My real parents are in prison? I felt like my head was spinning. How could my life get so crazy? Yep, they're in prison. Back then, the police stormed into the mob's headquarters, but the boss had managed to escape. That's why we put you in the protection program, because we knew he'd come search for you. This was too much. I didn't want such a dramatic life. Then I suddenly remembered there was more drama. Mom, I found out Dad was cheating on you, so I followed him here to Boston. Did you follow him too? I mean, how did you find me? This was so weird. My mom didn't look sad at all. She said, actually, he wasn't cheating. That woman and those kids are his family. You see, at the time, he and I were the only two people qualified enough to adopt you. So he actually left his family to fake our family life to protect you. It was all part of the protection program. But he missed his family so much. That's why he went back to see them most weekends. I'm so sorry, Aaron. We didn't expect it to turn out like this. When you didn't come home on Sunday, I used the GPS we set on your phone, and that's how I found you. Okay, my head was spinning even more. Not only were they not my real parents, they weren't even a real couple. This was absolute insanity, and all to protect me? Wow. And as it turns out, it worked out pretty well, because by tracking me, they found the new boss's hideout, and now the police had arrived and he was finally being arrested. As for me and my family, we had to pretend to be a real family, for now. And actually, it wasn't that hard because I loved them so much, and they'd sacrificed the past 12 years of their life to protect me. I'd be eternally grateful to them, and my biological parents would be out of prison soon, and then I'd be reunited with them. I don't remember anything about them, but they also sacrificed their lives to protect me, so they must be pretty amazing, right?
Yes! Headshot! Go cry to your mama! You're probably wondering who this gaming pro is. Well, that's me. Yes, it's 3 a.m., and I've been playing for 9 hours straight, but time sure does fly when I'm gaming. I'm Cooper, by the way, and I live with my wife Amelia and our baby girl Aura. I wanted to call her Zelda, but my wife said no way. I love gaming, and always thought it would be there to save me, but instead, it almost cost me everything I love. It started back when I was a little kid. My parents argued a lot, so I used to make a fort in my room, switch on my Nintendo DS, and escape into a virtual world. This love of games continued as I grew up. I didn't socialize or anything. Instead, I rushed home from school and went straight on my Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. I didn't have any real friends. Nope. The only kids I spoke to were ones I gamed with. Then I graduated from college and ended up with a job as a system engineer for a big tech company. Geez, it was exhausting. By the time I got home, I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open, let alone game. So, I put my gaming equipment in the basement. But then everything changed when I bumped into Amelia in a local coffee house. Whoa. She was the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. I guess she must have seen something she liked in this goofball, as after dating 6 months, we got married. I know. Crazy, huh? Soon after, she fell pregnant. I was excited but also terrified. How did that happen? I mean, I know how it actually happened, but whoa. Me? A dad? Then, when Aura was born, my life turned completely upside down. You see, babies cause a lot of stress. Did you know that the quickest way to get a child's attention is to sit down and look comfortable? 'Cause every time I did that, she started to cry. Work sucked, and then my home life sucked too. There was no escape. I felt like I was going to explode. So I went down to the basement and set my PC up. I started playing World of Warcraft. It felt incredible to be a druid again. The thought of gaming kept me going at work. Then when I got home, I barely acknowledged my wife and daughter and rushed down to the basement to play games. Amelia wasn't happy about it. She often appeared with a crying Aura and told me to take her. But I just grunted out "I'm busy." then carried on with my game. Hey, she was the one at home all day while I worked my butt off. All she needed to do was take care of the baby and keep the house clean. Easy. I told her this, and she got mad and made me sleep on the couch. Great? No, I mean really great. I could play video games all night long. Awesome. But it turns out it's much easier to game all night when you're in high school and can catch some Z's at the back of the class. But not so easy when you have a taxing job. I was on level 100 of exhaustion, so it wasn't surprising that I ended up messing up at work and got fired. Amelia was furious and demanded I apply for other jobs. Nah, I didn't want to. I mean, hello? No more early mornings, no more deadlines, no more cranky boss. It was just me and my beloved games. On one occasion, I was heading toward a record high score when suddenly Amelia appeared and blocked the screen. Babe, you need to move. I jabbed at the game console as I desperately tried to peer around her. No, she shouted at me. What's happened to you, Cooper? You look like Gandalf, only the homeless version. You hadn't taken a bath and shaved for weeks. You're killing me here. Now I'm dead. Thanks a lot. I slammed my fist onto the table. That's it. Get out. She yanked on my arm. I can't take this anymore. Get out. She actually kicked me out of my own home. That crazy woman. I didn't have any friends, so I ended up at my parents' house. This was so humiliating. I told them that it was just Amelia being hormonal, but they said she told them all about my gaming obsession, and it had to stop. They'd signed me up to be some guinea pig for an experimental treatment program in Hawaii. Hey, maybe a beach vacation didn't sound so bad, right? But nope. The island was literally in the middle of nowhere. Where was the hotel? All I saw were tiny huts with grass roofs. What? They couldn't expect me to stay here. This instructor guy called Cole gathered the group on the beach and gave us a rundown of the rules. We'd be camping here for the whole month, without any digital devices. We also had to follow a strict diet and exercise plan. Are you kidding me? I felt like I'd been sucked into a survival game and the escape button was busted. Everybody else started building their tents side by side. Socializing wasn't really my thing, so I built my tent away from them by the sea. It was hungry work and my stomach was rumbling. So I asked Cole when dinner was ready. He told me it was my job to make a fire. Then he passed me a note with instructions. 1. Gather dry wood. 2. Create a fire structure. 3. Light the fire by using the hand drill method. Okay, sounded easy. Dang it! I've been spinning this for about 20 minutes now. Where's the damn fire? I was about to give up when I suddenly saw something glowing. Oh my god, it worked! But then I felt a sneeze and couldn't hold it. Oh no, there goes the ember. In the end, this one guy pushed me out of the way and lit the fire in a few minutes. What a show-off. I was licking my lips in excitement when I saw Cole bringing out some food, but disappointedly, he passed me a plate of veg. What? I shouted out, "Where's the freaking chicken?" Cole pointed at the white thing on my plate. It's chicken breast. No, that's not chicken. Where are the wings and the breadcrumbs? He rolled his eyes. It's called clean eating. Get used to it. This place was a nightmare. But a good night's sleep would make me feel better, right? Wrong, as the ground was as hard as rocks. Finally, I fell asleep, only to wake up with soggy feet. Oh no, my tent was flooded. No wonder nobody else chose to camp next to the ocean. Island routine was awful. It was full of dumb group activities such as meditation, beach soccer, and hiking. One day we even had to build a raft. As usual, I tried my best to avoid working and socializing, but there's no way they'd leave me alone, so I reluctantly participated. After it was done, we tried it out, but it soon capsized, and I was the only one that couldn't swim. Everyone immediately rushed over and saved me. I was so touched and felt ashamed that I've been so self-centered. So after that, I actually tried to put myself out there and be more sociable. And not gonna lie, it was not too bad. Then our evenings were spent sitting around the campfire and listening to everyone drone on about their problems. My turn was easy for me because I had no problems. The problem was my wife, not me. She didn't understand that I had a lot of pressure at work and home, so playing video games was my only escape. Everyone tutted and glared at me. Then a guy named Brad said, "That's not cool, bro. To be honest, I was the same way. I was addicted to watching sports and refused to help my wife out. So we switched places, and I learned how hard caring for the kids and looking after the house is. I knew I needed to change before I lost my family forever, so that's why I joined the program." Poor guy, but this wasn't the same for me, was it? I don't know, maybe I had been a little unfair on Amelia. I was thinking about this as I walked back to my tent when this girl named Brittany caught up with me. She put her hand on my shoulder and flicked out her hair. Was she, flirting? I waved my wedding ring finger in front of her, but she just shrugged and said, "I don't see your wife here. Come to me when you change your mind." Then she walked away. Geez, this girl was crazy. Kinda hot, but still crazy. The next day, I unzipped my tent, ready for another day in this nightmare. But what was this? Huh? It was kinda beautiful here. It was like I was seeing it for the first time. The sparkling sand, swaying palm trees, lush tropical plants, and endless sunshine. Amelia and Aura would love it here too. I hoped they'd both forgive me. I really did miss them. By the end of the month, I didn't want to go home and play games anymore. Instead, I wanted to hug my family and never let them go. The day before we left, Cole rewarded us all with a 1-minute phone call. As much as I wanted to hear Amelia's voice, I was kinda nervous. I hoped she wasn't mad at me anymore. The phone started to ring, but some guy picked up. I asked where Amelia was, but he said she was in the shower. Then the line went dead. My 1 minute was up. Who was that dude? Was she having an affair? We were still married. And we have a child together. Furious, I ran into Brittany's tent, wanting to get back at my cheating wife. Brittany came toward me and was about to kiss me, but I couldn't go through with it. So I dodged out of the way, mumbled out sorry, then hurried out of there. The next day, I finally got off the island, and I went straight home to confront Amelia. I opened the door to see a man standing there holding my little Aura. How dare he? I yelled out, "Get away from my daughter!" Suddenly, Amelia appeared. "Cooper, stop! It's Rob!" I processed this information. Oh wait, he was Rob, her half-brother. Oops. I'd never met him before as he'd been living abroad. I quickly muttered out an apology to him. How embarrassing. I noticed Amelia was giving me this weird look. Then she said, "Wow, Cooper, you look so different." Oh yeah, before we were sent home, each of us were treated to a little makeover. A new haircut, new clothes, and a shave. And the clean eating and exercise meant I'd lost 20 pounds. Guess Amelia just couldn't resist this new hottie in town. She went straight for one big hug. So, in the end, Amelia forgave me for being a massive jerk. Now I have a new job. It's pretty boring, but I enjoy coming home and spending time with my family. As for gaming, I still do it, but in moderation. Only Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I make sure I switch it off by 10 p.m. Then I go and cuddle my wife. The gaming world is great and all, but I've come to learn that there's something even better in life, and that's making memories in the real world with my girls.
You see that sad girl sitting there in a flood of tears? Yeah, I know, she's pretty hard to miss. Well, that was me a few months ago. My boyfriend had literally just broken up with me, and I had to pack my stuff out of his place ASAP with a resentful heart. But thinking back, if he hadn't broken my heart, I wouldn't have fallen into this super awkward and ridiculous situation. Oh, I forgot. I'm Ava. I'm 22, and I suck at love. So, anyway, after crying like a newborn, I realized I needed a trip away to free my mind, just like Julia Roberts' character did in the movie Eat, Pray, Love. But I could only afford to do the low-budget version. So, I went on Airbnb and found a reasonably priced room to rent in this idyllic beach house. And it gets even better. The owner, Hazel, is out most of the time, so it would be like renting the whole house with the price of one room. Awesome! Reserved! I needed to get out of this emotional hellhole ASAP. As expected, Hazel wasn't home when I arrived, and I had to find the hidden key under a plant pot by the door and let myself in. And oh my, it was like stepping into a life-size retro dollhouse. From the chic furniture to the funky wallpaper, I loved it here. This Hazel girl has got some taste. Ooh, there was even a record player. If I'd have known, I would have brought my vinyls with me. But hey, her collection wasn't too shabby. I have to admit that the idea of having a cool friend like this Hazel girl sounded pretty awesome. I was determined to actually meet her because, yeah, it's been 5 wonderful days staying here and I still haven't run into her. So one night, I settled down in the living room and watched a movie while waiting for her to come home. She eventually showed up at 2 a.m. Ugh, this girl wasn't kidding about coming home late. I greeted her and said, "Hey, I saw you have an Exacta 35mm film camera. That's so cool. Also, would you mind if I take a look at your vinyls? She looked a bit confused and replied, I have a what? Oh, you mean those rusty old things? They're my brother's. I doubt he'd mind. He always talks to me nonstop about them. So I think he'd be happy there's someone in this house who speaks the same language as him. Ha! Oh, they're her brothers? How very interesting. This got me thinking. Is he handsome? And what about his personality? Is he an arty type with a kind soul? Daydreaming about this mystery guy became a regular occurrence for me. Oh gosh, was I crushing on a guy I'd never even met? How desperate was I? One day I came home from grocery shopping. I was totally exhausted, so I threw the groceries in the kitchen and jumped straight onto the pile of blankets on my bed. Only it wasn't just the simple blankets. What? Someone was under them! We banged heads! Ouch! I removed the blankets to catch this pervert out. Huh? I know this guy. It was my ex! What in God's name was he doing here? Oh, for the record, this wasn't my current ex. This was Nolan. We used to date back in high school, but I'd not spoken to him in a long time. So it turns out he's Hazel's mystery brother. Ew. This whole time I'd been accidentally crushing on my jerky ex-boyfriend. This made sense now, as we always did have lots in common, but ugh. Thank you, universe, for ruining my vacation. With a dagger stare, I asked him why he had the audacity to be napping in my bed. He snorted, then said, Your bed? This is my house, in my room. The question is, what are you doing here? Reluctantly, I explained everything to him, and it turns out he was meant to be away on a 2-month business trip, so Hazel put his room on Airbnb without asking him. The problem being, he came back early. He just shrugged and said, But I'm home now, so can you please take your stuff and get out of here? I'll get Hazel to refund you or whatever. This made me mad. I'd paid for the room. I had rights, so I was staying put. So I told him, I'm not going anywhere. You'll just have to sleep on the couch. He didn't seem happy about it. In fact, he grumbled to himself as he left the room. But at least he left. I thought this would be it, but oh, how wrong I was. And that's when the war for the bedroom began. The next morning, I awoke to hear these weird squawking noises. Then I felt something flap in my face. Sleepily, I tried to whack it away and opened my eyes. Staring back at me was this massive gull. Ugh! Nolan! There were about a dozen of them hanging out in my room, all pecking and flapping around my stuff. It took me over an hour to shoo them out of the window. Afterward, I was so mad that I locked myself in the bathroom. After 30 minutes, Nolan thudded on the door. He urgently needed to use it. I opened the door with a smirk on my face and brushed past him. I soon heard his disgruntled shouts. Yep, I'd wrapped the toilet paper with duct tape. Ha! I wasn't done with him yet, so that evening I hid some cookie crumbs on the couch, and he woke up the next day covered in ant bites. He was like a real-life ... Yes, it's 2-1, loser. This went on for a couple of days. Nolan switched the toaster settings, so my breakfast was ruined. Yuck. So I sneakily downloaded a fake cracked screen app on his phone and placed it on the floor. When he picked up his phone, he totally freaked out and started blaming his dog. It was so funny. All this pranking was exhausting, so I was kind of relieved when Nolan went out one night, and I could just chill on the couch and watch a movie. Suddenly, the power went out. Great. The switch must have tripped or something. I put on the torch on my phone and was about to go and check it out when my phone rang. All I could hear was someone deep breathing into it. What the hell? I hung up and my body started to shake. All of a sudden, the door burst open and Ghostface was standing there. Terrified, I held my head and screamed like a banshee. But then I heard somebody call my name. Ava! Ava! It's me, Nolan. It's okay. I was so relieved to see him that I jumped into his arms and cried into his sweater. Please don't cry. I've got you, he said in a soft voice while he held me. I felt so secure and safe. What was that he was holding in his hand? It was a ghost face mask. It was him! He knew I hated horror movies. What a jerk! I pushed him away and shouted, "What the hell? Are you crazy?" He just smiled and replied, "It was worth it, 'cause the hug was so sweet." Man, I hate this jerk. After that, I avoided him. So, okay, I did catch myself looking over at him and getting this weird, warm feeling. One time, he was playing with his dog on the beach, and I watched on from the porch. Did I have a crush on my ex? My God, I hope not, 'cause that would be pathetic. But I had to admit that, although his pranks were really annoying, they'd also been kind of fun. It made me reminisce on the old days when we were together, and we were so happy back then. But nothing lasts forever. Hazel appeared with 2 cups of coffee, and we started chatting. I told her how annoying her brother was. She laughed, then replied, "I know, sorry. I didn't know you guys used to date. I wouldn't have rented the room to you if I had. I get that it must be awkward for you, especially as you were the one who broke up with him, right?" I did what? He was the one who broke up with me because he was moving away at the time and couldn't handle the long-distance relationship. And worse, he did it over a freaking letter. She looked at me confused, then said, "Oh, that's peculiar, as he told me he wrote you a letter telling you about his feelings. Then you shouted at him that it was over." I replied, "Part of his letter said, 'I love you and all, but this long-distance stuff is like madly scary.' So it kind of seemed obvious to me that he wanted to end things." She shook her head. "No, I swear he just wanted to tell you how much he loved you. But obviously, my dearest brother totally sucks at writing. What an idiot. I told him he should have let me proofread his dumb love letter." So it turns out our breakup had all been a misunderstanding. I mean, come on, who writes love letters anymore? Anyway, the past was the past, so I decided it was best to leave it there. Besides, I only had a few days left here. On my last day, I packed my things and said goodbye to Hazel. I had to admit that I was really gonna miss it here. Nolan was nowhere to be found. He must be celebrating because he finally had his room back. Whatever, it's not like I needed to say goodbye to him. I took a cab to the train station. On the way, I couldn't shake Nolan out of my head. He needed to know the truth about the breakup. I couldn't let him think that I was a cruel person back then. "Stop! Turn around!" I shouted out to the cab driver. I ran back into the house. Hazel stared at me in shock. Why aren't you at the train station?" Oh, wow. I couldn't believe they wanted to get rid of me so fast. I was about to leave when Hazel continued. "Nolan just took a cab there to talk to you. Let me call him." Nolan answered the phone and asked me to meet him at a lighthouse nearby. Oh gosh, I was so nervous. What did he want to tell me? Maybe Hazel had told him about our convo the other morning. I spotted him. He was holding something. Gee, I hoped it wasn't another letter. He blushed while looking at me. Then he said in a shy voice, You forgot something in my room." Then he handed me a bag. I opened it, and there was my lingerie! Oh, great! How could I forget them? So he wasn't going to tell me anything. But wait a minute. These weren't mine. And they still had the tags on. He giggled and said, "Sorry, I swear that was the last prank. I just needed a reason to see you. Hazel told me everything. I don't blame you for our breakup. I blame my poor writing skills. The point is, I love you. I just love you. You're the only girl I've ever loved. Still to this day. I've never loved anyone else." Oh gosh, I couldn't believe it. Although I was pretty sure he'd just quoted that from a movie or series or something. As we all know, he sucks with words, and it sounded familiar. Anyway, I threw the bag of lingerie in his face and then wrapped my arms around him. So, from then on, the room war stopped. Not because I was leaving, but because we became roommates. Let me tell you this. Actually, there's not much to tell. Only, when your boyfriend writes you a letter, please make sure you read it very carefully. Actually, scrap that. Just tell him to get with the times and to text you.
I was swaying to the music with the hottest girl at school in my arms. Everything was perfect when suddenly I saw a flurry of red storming toward me, and then the next thing I knew, I was being slapped across the face. Ugh, it was my ex, Rosie. She was looking at me as if she wanted to snap me in half. Okay, so Rosie and me had only broken up yesterday, but that didn't mean she had the right to go full psycho on me. Hey, so I'm Andrew, and I like to think I'm a pretty smart guy. The problem is, I'm a sucker for hot girls. I tend to be blinded by their beauty. The result being, I don't always make the best decisions around them. But I had no idea what drama my weakness for a pretty girl was about to get me into. So it all began with the end-of-term college party. Me and my friends went heavy on the drinks. So when my friend Brad bet me a burger that I wouldn't go and ask Lisa to dance, well, I didn't hesitate in approaching her. Geez, she's so hot and way out of my league. So I was expecting her to tell me to go away, but instead she smiled and let me lead her over to the dance floor. While we were dancing, she whispered in my ear that she'd always liked me. Then, yep, you guessed it, Rosie, my crazy ex, stormed over and slapped me. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache. Ugh, what was all that shouting coming from outside my open window? I wrapped my bed cover around me and shuffled my way over there to take a look. Lisa and Rosie were yelling at each other. He's mine, not yours. Stay away. He wants me, not you. Deal with it. Oh yeah? Well, maybe we should ask Andrew who he prefers. What's the point? As we both know he'll pick me. I was far too hungover for this, so I closed the window and went back to bed. These girls, they wouldn't stop. For the next few days, they bombarded me with messages and waited for me outside my house. Okay, so most guys dream of two hot girls fighting over them, but trust me, watching them pull each other's hair extensions out isn't as glamorous as it sounds. Thankfully, my prayers were answered by none other than Richie, my awesome brother. He showed up with a ticket for a luxury 2-week cruise trip. He'd booked it ages ago, but then a work thing came up, so the ticket was all mine. Hell yeah! I hugged my brother, grabbed the ticket out of his hand, and started packing. The tricky part was sneaking past Rosie and Lisa, who were still lingering about outside. So I borrowed my housemate's hoodie and baseball cap and pretended to be him to get past them. Result, they didn't even double look at me. Goodbye to my Lisa and Rosie nightmare and hello to the vacation of my dreams. Ah, this is the life. Trust my brother to book such a lavish place. My room was huge and it had my very own balcony. There was so much to do here, from the outdoor bar, dozens of restaurants, swimming pool, cinema. I was on my own floating complex. Heaven. The next morning when I woke up in my king-size bed, I took in the sounds of silence. Yup, oh sweet silence, how I've missed you. This was a no-girl arguing zone. I got changed and walked over to the outdoor bar. It definitely wasn't too early for a cocktail. I had a pair of shades on, and that's when I spotted her. Whoa, she was beautiful. I quickly ordered 2 cocktails and began walking toward her. I was about to hand her the drink when I tripped over a sun lounger, and in slow motion I watched the cup fall. I desperately tried to grab it, but nope. Instead, I managed to knock into her back. She let out a yelp and then yelled out, "You pervert! What do you think you're playing at?" I stood there open-mouthed, contemplating if I should dive into the pool to escape this drama or not. Then I looked down at my sunglasses, which in all the action had fallen off. Suddenly, an idea came to me. So I bent down, stretched out my arms, and pretended to fumble around for them. She looked at me for a while, then picked my sunglasses up, placed them in my hand, then said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Here, let me help you." Then she took my arm and guided me across the pool area. I thanked her. And then, with my trusty shades on, I watched her walk away. So she thought I was blind. Yep, this wasn't my greatest idea, but it got me out of a sticky situation with a hot girl at least. Later that night, I went to the buffet restaurant for dinner. I was stacking my plate when I bumped straight into someone and almost dropped my plate. Ugh, it was that hot girl again. I quickly put my shades on, then deliberately turned the wrong way and loudly said, "Oh, I'm sorry." She put her hand on my shoulder and guided me so I was facing her, then said, "Yeah, it's me, the girl from the pool. And it's okay, I should have been looking where I was going. Do you need any help?" I quickly cut her off. No thanks, it's okay. Then I lifted my plate up to my nose and sniffed it. These prawns sure smell good. She raised an eyebrow at my food-smelling talent, so I carried on pretending to sniff the food as I put it on my plate. And you know what? She wouldn't quit staring at me. Eventually, she walked off. Phew, what a narrow escape. Afterward, I went to the top deck bar to chill out, with yet another cocktail. Then who should walk over but, yup, you guessed it, the hot girl. I immediately looked away from her, but what's this? She walked over to me and sat down opposite me. Hey, do you remember me? She asked. Seeing my chance to flirt with her, I replied, Oh yes, how could I forget someone as beautiful as you are? Huh? How do you know that I'm beautiful? Damn it, I needed to think before I spoke. Ah, well, it's your voice. A sweet voice like yours can only belong to a beautiful girl. Crisis averted. As after that we started chatting, and oh boy, she's a sweetheart. Do you know that she's an activist for an organization that works hard to guarantee the rights of baby girls born in Africa? I know, amazing. The evening came to an end and she said, Oh, my name's Bella, by the way. I replied, Bella, a name as beautiful as your soul. Mine's Andrew. She gave me a nervous giggle. Well, Andrew, it's getting late, so I suppose I better get back to my cabin. I didn't want the night to ever end, so I blurted out, Whoa, Bella, look at the sky. Isn't it so stunning? She glared at me and then replied, How would you know that? Oops, of course, I was meant to be blind. I can feel it from the breeze. She gave me a quizzing look, then said, Right, well, good night. How about we meet at the arcade tomorrow, let's say 10 a.m.? I excitedly agreed, then she left. Another close escape. I really needed to be more careful. Bella, Bella, Bella. I couldn't stop thinking of her. The next day, I'm such a kid when it comes to arcades, I can't help it. My inner child comes out and, ooh, a car racing game. Nope, I was pretending to be blind. So I awkwardly lingered in the foyer and waited for Bella to show up. When she did, she took my arm and guided me through the arcade. She described all the different games machines to me, which I thought was really sweet. Then she led me over to the plushie grabber machine and squealed excitedly. Hoo-hoo, I loved these as a kid. Soon I was fumbling about to slot my money in, adamant I was going to win her a plushie. But wait, I was meant to be blind. So I touched the controls, then closed my eyes. Her laughter said it all. Massive fail. It was all going to be okay until Bella had to use the restroom and instructed me to stay put and wait for her by a shooting game machine, which just so happened to be my all-time favorite arcade game. I rushed over to it as soon as she was out of sight, grabbed a gun, and shot 5 cannons in a row. Then I jumped up and down and whooped in the air. I turned around and saw Bella frowning at me. Oh boy, busted. I tried to explain, but she just shook her head and said, How could you? You're a coward, a pervert, and a liar. Then she ran off. I felt terrible. I tried searching the ship for her, but I couldn't find her anywhere. Feeling bummed out, I ordered a cocktail, then went for a walk across the deck. Suddenly, I heard shouting coming from below me. Huh? What was that? I peered down and saw a man and a woman trying to drag a little girl into one of the safety rafts. Hang on, they weren't alone. Bella was there too. She was trying to pull the little girl away from them. Without even thinking, I dropped my drink and ran over to them. I charged towards the woman and knocked her so hard she almost fell into the sea. The man reached out to steady her, which gave Bella a chance to pick up the kid. Then she grabbed my arm and pulled me away. After that, the bad guys jumped into the raft and sailed away. We returned the girl to her parents. It turns out Bella was on her way to her cabin when she saw a couple in tears as they couldn't find their daughter. So she went looking for her and walked in on the kidnapping. After that, Bella forgave me. Well, I did save the day and all. And we spent the rest of the trip together. Then on our last day, I got down on one knee and asked her to be my girlfriend. And she said yes. I took her back home with me, and as we walked over to my house, Lisa and Rosie ran towards me and started arguing with each other about who I liked more. Oh shoot, I'd forgotten about them. Reading the situation, Bella approached them. Thank God you're here. I assume one of you is his girlfriend, right? There was an accident, and Andrew's blind now, and he really needs someone by his side 24/7. Hearing that, I quickly coordinated with her by waving my arms wildly about. So, which one is your girlfriend, Andy? It's Lisa. Rosie quickly chimed in. No, he's all yours. We only hung out once. Ha, what suckers. I watched them run away. Then Bella and I burst out laughing. After that, I held my arm out to her and let her guide me home, for old time's sake. Lying to her about being blind was a jerky thing to do, but I only did it in the first place because being around beautiful girls makes me so nervous I do dumb stuff. It's just lucky that Bella forgave me, because I think this dumbass may have found his dream girl.
Ew, there's a fly in my drink. That's so gross. I'm not paying for this. The kid shoved the cup of lemonade in my hand, then ran away. I just saw you drop it in, and it's not even a real fly. Hey, stop! I shouted after him, but it was too late. He'd gone, and now so had the rest of my customers. Dang it! That was the third time this week, and I knew exactly who was behind this. Michael! I glared over the fence, then charged towards his lemonade stand. Seeing his fake grin, I got even more furious that I poured the cup of lemonade over his sneakers, snatched a dollar bill out of his hand, and then walked off. You see, I'm Amy, and I'm the kind of girl who knows what she wants and gets what she wants. And what I want is for Mike to admit defeat and stop messing with my business. Ugh! I've been on this mission for the past 10 years. I kid you not, it's a literal war between us. It's not fun and games at all, especially now that we have our parents involved in this. You see, my parents and his parents are best friends. In fact, they're so close that I'm pretty sure back in the day, our moms planned their pregnancies together. So me and Mike were born only a week apart. And of course, I was born before him. So there's that. I've won right from the first round. In your face, Mikey! But even worse than the joint birthday parties, shared vacations, and being classmates with him for over a dozen years, I have to live next door to him too. Yep, our parents deliberately moved in next door as they thought raising us together would be fun. They dreamed of us being the best of friends like them. Ugh, no chance. Instead, our disliking for each other began at an early age. Whenever Mike came over, he would throw my Barbie dolls across the room, cut the hair off of them, or wrap my dollhouse in toilet paper. So I retaliated by turning his room into a Lego minefield. Ha! And then I drew flowers on his stupid face while he was napping. Our parents put this down to the cute little things kids did, but nothing about this was cute. This meant war. Our feud heated up once we started to go to school. Everything was a contest between us, from grades, school activities, and even just for the window seat on the school bus. Once, before the summer holidays started, our teacher suggested that over the break, we could have fun helping out our parents with some useful activities, like making homemade goods and selling them in our front yard. Upon hearing that, I caught Mike's challenging look and knew that this meant one thing. Okay then, game on. On the first day, I got up early to set up my lemonade stand out in my front yard. But then I looked to my left, and guess what I saw in dear Mikey's yard? Yep, a lemonade stand. Ugh! Why did he have to be such a copycat? We both seemed to attract lots of customers, but I don't know if it was just me, but it seemed like he was selling more than me. So, over the summer, I used my profits to upgrade my lemonade stand little by little, with eye-catching decorations, promotions, and I even added lemon snow cones to my menu. Finally, my queue seemed notably longer than Mike's. The snow cones were doing the trick. But then, a loud speaker sounded out from next door. Come and try my new iced tea! Handmade using my secret recipe! Try it today at an introductory half-price offer! To my utter dismay, most of the people in my queue left and went over to Mike's stand. Ugh, the sneak. Then worse, he started blasting out catchy tunes to catch people's attention. That summer ended, but it had kick-started the entrepreneur dreams in our little hearts. So throughout the next summer breaks, we continued to grow our businesses. I expanded my stand to sell a selection of drinks, snacks, and fast foods, with delivery service too. Once, with my friend's help, we even included a car washing service. Another time, we opened a little creche in our garden so busy parents could drop their kids off for a couple of hours, and also grab a drink to go while they were there. Sounds good, right? But you know what? Whatever I sold, whatever I did, a couple of days later, Mike went and did the exact same thing. And then he had the cheek to accuse me of copying his ideas. Ugh! He was so annoying. Anyway, now at 17, what started out as a fun hobby expanded so much that I opened a mini diner in my garage. At first, it just made sense, as it meant I had customers regardless of the weather. Plus, there were also a few tables outside, and not to brag, but the seats were rarely empty. But then, of course, you guessed it, Mike went and turned his garage into a mini diner too. Oof! Our diners became well-known hotspots in our neighborhood, and they proved so popular that our parents continued to run them all year round. I was mad that whatever I did, Mike went and did it too. Then, to bug me further, he sent his friends around on a Saturday, and they just sat there taking up all of the seats, while only ordering Cokes. So, I sent my friend Cynthia around to his diner, and she pretended to have food poisoning after eating their food. Then she proceeded to fake gag and ran to the restroom back and forth until the customers all freaked out and left. But then he started to spread negative feedback about our place on the internet, and I did the same in return. Ugh, there's no ending to this fight ever! But I will never back down. I knew Mike had a huge crush on this Stacy girl in his science class, and one time after school, I saw him leading her into his house, probably to bore her senseless, bragging about his lousy business again. So I quickly put on makeup and changed into a cute dress. It's showtime, baby. I went over to Mike's house right on time to see him serve Stacy some of his restaurant's signature dishes. I put on an act and jumped on him. You're cheating on me with this girl? She has nothing on me! How could you? I continued to make a scene, pulling on Mike's hair and screaming, until Stacy looked super awkward and made an excuse to leave. Result! But uh-oh, Mike didn't seem to see the funny side of this. I'd actually never seen him look this mad before. His ears went bright red, then he shouted at me. Amy, competition or not, have I ever interfered in your private life? You've crossed the line this time. He knocked over the drink he'd made for Stacy, then sneered as he walked away. Seeing as you let yourself in, you can let yourself out. So, seemed like I'd won this round, but why didn't it feel good at all? And more like embarrassing. After that, Mike wouldn't even look me in the eye. Whatever. I mean, he would soon mellow down and mess with my business again anyway. Right? Then one day after school, I arrived home to find my parents sitting with some strange, professional-looking man. They called me over to join them. Then the man told me how he wanted to open a well-known fast food franchise in the neighborhood. Upon seeing me looking not really interested in what he was saying, he snidely remarked, "Come on, you get what I mean. It'd be ridiculous to have 3 fast food restaurants all in the same place, right? And let's face it, yours is just some fun little kiddie's hobby, which will never go anywhere. Take this." He held out an envelope. "And go focus on your grades. Just leave business to the adults." Furious, I snatched the envelope off of him. Yep, it was full of dollar bills. How dare he try and bribe me? What a jerk. So I threw it back at him, then stormed off. "Think about it, Amy," the man shouted after me. "Don't go making a decision you'll come to regret." The next day, when I arrived home from school, the man was sitting in my diner eating my awesome pancakes. Ugh, why couldn't he get the hint? I stormed over and told him to leave. He grinned at me, then said, "These are good. You know, I think there's room for both of our businesses. All you have to do is take some items off your menu." He gestured to the pancakes. "And spread some rumors about Mike's diner's hygiene not being up to scratch to close it down, and I'll let you keep your diner." Seeing my confused look, he added another push. "I'm only telling you this because I know you're a smart girl. Smarter than that boy. So, choose wisely." Well, that's true. I am smarter than Mike, but this was crazy. I spent all evening considering it. I mean, there's no way I could compete against a big-name franchise, but this way I stood some sort of a chance. right? But as annoying as Mike was, could I really do this to him? At 2 a.m., I sat up in bed, still so torn about this all. I rushed next door and threw a stone at Mike's window. The light in his room turned on right away. Obviously, he was having a sleepless night too. He looked out and saw me, then he joined me on the porch, and we sat there in silence for a good while. Then he spoke up. "Ames, your pancake tower is amazing. Really?" Sighing, I replied, "Honestly, I drool just thinking about your double-deck burger. But if we don't take those dishes off our menus, I think that man will find a way to close us down." He shook his head. "Well, the Ames I know wouldn't quit that easily, right?" I let out another long sigh. "Yeah, but this is different. They're a big-name franchise. Our small little dining wouldn't be able to hold up for long, sooner or later." Then we fell back into this despairing silence. "I say we can do it. We can do it together." Mike suddenly stood up and pointed at our houses. "We have plenty of space to open up one big diner. Ha! What do you say?" Me and him working together? Would that ever work? But, well, nothing's impossible for big girl Amy. I grinned at him. "Bring it on. Let's fight till our last breath." So, the very next day, we joined forces and started preparing for the opening of the joint diner. Naturally, our parents were, of course, thrilled with the idea. They happily broke down the fences and even built a joint corridor to connect our houses together. We're now officially registered as one business and have all of our food, safety, and hygiene certificates. You know, the boring but official stuff. As for the franchise man, it turns out people in town are loyal to us. So when the story of his dirty tricks spread out, everyone said they'd boycott his restaurant if he ever opened it. So we never heard from him again. Huh, that's karma for you. And what happened next? Well, Mike and I are still running our business together, and it's going pretty well so far. It's a real family affair, with everyone helping out. Actually, it turns out running our own business together is far more fun than competing against each other. Maybe Mike isn't as bad as I always made him out to be, and sometimes I still claim myself to be his girlfriend when I catch a girl lurking around him. I guess he should learn to get used to having only one girl in his life. And thinking about it, I suppose that's always been me.